All righty. All right. There we go. Now that we're situated, can everybody see this okay? All right, great. Thank you very much, and everybody for being here, and thank you so much for your patience. My name is Anna Weber. Just want to welcome everyone to our webinar. I'm excited to turn it over to our speakers here in a minute, but before we do that, I'm just going to give a quick little rundown of what our organization is and what we do for anyone who may not be aware. So this session is being hosted by the Society for Conservation Biology of North America. We are a professional society that's focused on the conservation of biodiversity, healthy ecosystems, and human connections. The SCB North America is the North American region of the broader Society for Conservation Biology. And our mission as a group is to provide a venue to connect diverse students and professionals to advance and apply conservation knowledge, and to welcome, support, and empower all voices engaged in conservation to contribute to equitable solutions and to catalyze wonder for the natural world. So, and it's a lot of words, but essentially what that boils down to is that we are a very broad and diverse society with an overall aim to support conservation and support the people who are doing conservation. And so this includes biologists and environmental scientists and consultants, and we have economists and psychologists and artists. So it's really an extremely broad organization. Anything that is adjacent to the field of conservation is really welcome. So our members have access to professional development opportunities like this webinar, and also to biennial conferences that we host every 2 years, with our next one being in 2026 in Milwaukee. And then the SCB Global also puts out several publications that members have the option to subscribe to. If you're interested in learning more about SCB&A, feel free to scan this QR code here. It just goes to our website, so you can get more background information. So this session specifically is being hosted by the Student Affairs Committee. Our aim is essentially to provide support for students at the undergraduate level and the graduate level, as well as early career professionals and people who are job seeking in the conservation field. So we provide networking and professional development opportunities. We do a lot of webinars. Some of them are focused on technical skill building, which will be coming up next month. Professional development opportunities like this panel, and then social and networking events, which tend to happen more so in person during our conferences. So the Student Affairs Committee is we have a pretty solid group of people on the committee right now, and I'm the current chair, although my term is going to be ending pretty shortly. But if you're interested in being part of the society and being part of the committee and helping us to provide these kinds of opportunities for students, feel free to send me an email. My contact information is there at the bottom of the screen. So this webinar today, which is focused on careers in the private sector, is our final webinar for a series that kind of lasted through the winter on professional networking and career development. And I'm very excited about the session. I think it's going to be great. And then what we have coming up next, after this career development series is winding down, we'll be starting on a series that's more focused on data analysis and skill building. So that first one from that series will begin on May 7th with Introduction to Data Science in R for Conservation. And this is actually kind of a part 2 of a previous webinar that we did, although they can be standalone as well. So this one is going to focus on data visualization and data management in R. And then after that, we'll have one on conservation genomics. And if you check out our website, you can see the full list of webinars that we have upcoming. So very shortly, I will turn it over to our speakers who are joining us today. I believe all of them are visiting us from the Society they're all part of the Society for Ecological Restoration, which is a group that we've been working with quite closely recently. And I'll let the speakers each introduce themselves as they go. I think they're each going to give a short presentation, and then the rest of the time that we have, we'll turn it over for just open Q&A. So first up, we have Regina Wandeler from the King County Parks Department, who's a project manager. We have Robbie Wachter, and I'm so sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, from WSP USA Incorporated, who's a water engineer, and Keith McCallum, who is the project or program coordinator at the Society for Ecological Restoration and the owner of Guardian Ecology, which is a nonprofit for ecological restoration. So maybe Regina, maybe I'll turn it over to you first, if that's all right.
Sure. I'm happy to start things off. I was just going to give as a presentation a quick overview of my kind of career pathway to the job that I have now. And keep it a little bit short to the point, happy to answer questions later. I want to flag that the title of this talk is officially focused on careers in the private sector, and I do not have that angle, but it was flagged that my position might still be of interest to folks on the call. So I'll talk a little bit about that and maybe some overlap potential there. So I'm Regina Wandler. I live in Washington State. I'm involved with the Northwest chapter of the Society for Ecological Restoration, and it's really nice to join you all and have a chance to chat a little bit today. I started, I guess I'll go back and say when I was growing up, I think I was um, lucky to be able to have some background growing up in, maybe this is my biggest connection to the private sector. My family has a tree farm in Washington State, so a small family forest, and I had exposure to that growing up and became familiar with concepts of forest management and stewardship and became really interested in those. Sat in on a lot of learning sessions as a kid with my family. And then when I went to undergrad, I ended up doing a lot of different things. And that's kind of a core part of what I'll talk about in my journey is just having a lot of different interests and exploring a lot of those interests. And I think that's been really beneficial for me in terms of the career pathways I've been able to explore. I ended up doing a degree in community environment and planning, which is kind of an urban planning undergraduate degree at the University of Washington, but it had a lot of flexibility and people took it in a lot of different directions. I took it and I focused a lot on forest management. I actually worked on developing forest stewardship plans for my family tree farm as part of what I did in my undergrad degree. Um, and I had the opportunity to learn a lot of technical skills regarding forestry. But the other thing that got focused on a lot in my undergraduate background was community, and really like connecting with people and understanding the needs of human communities and how those overlap with all of our management of natural areas. I also double majored in comparative history of ideas, which I think was great and complementary. It's a major that everyone in the major would joke about it not really leading to a lot of jobs. So it's nice to pair it with something. But I think it's great to have the opportunity to do that and to explore other interests. I had a chance to delve deep into other things that were fascinating to me, and those have popped up in different ways as I've gone on my career path. So, for example, in that degree, I actually participated in a student art session in my last quarter at UW and did a soundscapes of urban settings project. And it's been interesting because being able to think about art and think about some of the more like humanities topics and how those relate to conservation topics and how you can use those topics to engage more humans in the work you're doing is really valuable. I'd encourage you all to explore that if that's something you're interested in. After undergrad, I graduated in 2008, and as many people know, there was a recession happening at that point. So it was hard to find a job in conservation. And I ended up deciding to explore another pathway I was interested in for a couple of years. I taught at a couple of different preschools, and that was a great experience. I think that there's a lot of things you can take away from teaching and bring into the conservation world. It was really fantastic to have a chance to connect more with families and understand the challenges that parents were going through. And that carried forward after I taught in preschools for a couple of years. I took an AmeriCorps term with Skagit Land Trust, a county scale land trust in Washington State. I served as a volunteer coordinator for a year, and then I was able to continue on and stay there in a staff position in the stewardship department. When I first started out at the Land Trust, my job was really human focused. I was learning a lot of technical skills and learning the how you do restoration, how you do invasive species removal, how you plan for land management of complex and diverse types of sites. But a lot of that really related to how our organization connected with people in Skagit County. When you're working in, especially I would say, a nonprofit, you really have to read the community. And now I'm working in a public agency, and you really need to know your community and understand what people want so that the projects and work that you're moving forward with are aligned with community desires. So had the opportunity to continue on at Skagit Land Trust, spent several years gaining more skills, kind of taking advantage of every opportunity to learn that came my way. Attended a lot of workshops, some of which panned out and let me develop different programs that I could implement at the Land Trust. We started an entire amphibian monitoring program after I was able to take a workshop focused on identifying organ spotted frog egg masses. So some really great opportunities to learn and then grow those in ways that really related to the land management work that was the core of what I was doing. Um, I also really, I would say, learned the value of informal connections in learning in that time. In the land trust world, there are a lot of ways to learn formally, but a lot of the best ways to learn are from conversations with folks in similar roles at organizations near you. Washington has a really solid network of land trusts. Every part of the state is served by one land trust or another. And there's a lot of land trusts kind of at that county scale. So there was a huge network of folks whose brains I could pick and really learn from as I was growing in that position. Um, and really threw myself into just taking advantage of any opportunity to connect with those folks and talk about everything from exactly how people did property monitoring visits and how could we improve those to what types of new programs are people exploring to engage community members in citizen science. So those kinds of conversations were really important. And eventually I decided that I loved learning that way, but I was ready for more. I wanted to get more technical skills in my background. And so I went back to graduate school at UW again, University of Washington, and got a degree in environmental horticulture, which is a little bit of a confusing name for the degree. It's really focused on ecological restoration from a plant perspective. And so had the chance to get a lot more technical skills when I went back for a graduate degree. The other thing that I think graduate school was incredibly useful for was developing a bigger community. So connecting with folks who were doing a lot of different types of conservation work. I'd been connecting with folks who were involved more in land management previously, but going back to grad school gave me the opportunity to meet with people who were doing many, many different kinds of work and get kind of a broader overview of the types of conservation work that could connect with the work I was doing. Very exciting. And those are still some of the connections that I really rely on in my day-to-day work today. I know lots of folks who are resources. We reach out to each other and pick each other's brains. That's also when I became involved with the Society for Ecological Restoration. And I think that's also been a really important part of my career journey and professional development. Having that broader professional community and having folks who are interested in learning and growing and understanding kind of the standards for how I practiced my profession through the Society for Ecological Restoration was really valuable. So I think that's something I'd encourage as a way to help make sure that you're keeping up on advances in your field as you keep moving forward. After grad school, I was still working at Skagit Land Trust, and I stayed there and eventually was the stewardship director. Um, and after being there for several years and through COVID, about a year and a half ago, I decided I was ready to try something new, and I made the transition over to King County. King County is a large county in Washington. It's where Seattle is located. So it's the county serving the area around Seattle. Um, and I work for Parks and Recreation at King County. So I'm a special project manager, which means that I handle high priority projects for the Parks division that don't necessarily fit into anyone's regular job description. So a lot of troubleshooting, very different kinds of things. I work on everything from reporting on water quality for salmon safe certification to helping with the community engagement planning process for developing a new community center in an underserved urban area. And it's been a really great opportunity to take a lot of the skills that I developed over the earlier part of my career and apply them in a broader way to a new work environment. And it's been really interesting. And with that, maybe I'll end my talk and pass it on.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Regina. Can we turn it over to Robert next?
Yeah, absolutely. Can you hear me okay, Anna?
Yep, you sound good.
You did do a great job of saying my last name, by the way. It's not often somebody gets that on the first try.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear it.
I guess I did have some slides. But it says the host has screen sharing disabled.
I think I can fix that. Give me a
Okay,
minute.
no worries. I'm definitely not as good with speaking off the cuff as Regina was,
Okay.
but I can make do if I can't share.
I think you should be able to share now. Give it a
Okay.
try. Yes, got it.
Awesome. Got it. Cool. All right. So, hi, everyone. I'm Robert Wachter. I am a water resources engineer based out of New Jersey in the US. And I work for a company called WSP. We're a pretty large engineering consulting firm. We're international. We have offices all over. So, I guess, similar to Regina, I'll just talk a little bit about my background and what I do on a day-to-day basis, and then I'll just touch on WSP and what we do a little bit. So my education was a little bit unique. I was in a 3-2 engineering program. So I got 2 bachelor's degrees out of that. One was in environmental science, the other was in environmental engineering. And I feel like that has been a good mix for what I do in terms of restoration design. Um, it's a good blend of the sciences and also engineering. And just some trainings and certifications that I have. I have my engineering training certification, and I'm hoping this year to obtain my professional engineering certification. Um, and then through SER, I have my certified ecological restoration practitioner in training certification. I've also done some training in fluvial geomorphology. Um, Dave Roskin through Wildlands Hydrology runs a course in fluvial geomorphology, and there's 4 different levels to it. But this training really helps guide our stream restoration design. So if you're interested in that, I would say that is a very cool training to check out. It's not just engineers in it. There's scientists and biologists and ecologists that attend that training as well. And then also, because some of my projects deal with hazardous substances, I also have my HAZWOPER 40-hour training. And then just the typical projects that I work on focus on stream restoration, dam removal projects. My team has been getting into some of those projects, and also coastal and freshwater wetland restoration. Since I'm in New Jersey, there is a lot of coastal work available. And then I also deal with permitting and mitigation. So in New Jersey, we have pretty extensive flood hazard area permits. So that is a decent chunk of work from time to time. And then any permitting dealing with wetland disturbance as well. I help our clients with those. Typical day is a mix of office and field work. It depends. It kind of comes in waves. Sometimes I'm in the office for stretches at a time. Other times I'm doing field work for months at a time as well. So my office work typically centers around doing designs in AutoCAD, Civil 3D, modeling through HEC-RAS, also some design report writing and report writing for permit applications, quantity and cost estimates for some of our projects, and then also writing specifications for those projects. And then my field work is a mix of pre-construction stuff and post-construction monitoring, and then construction oversight work. Currently, I am on site for about another year on a tidal restoration project in New Jersey. So that is my day to day. Oh, and also I'm involved in the Society for Ecological Restoration, as I'm sure you guys assumed. And I serve as the past president for our Mid-Atlantic chapter. So my day to day right now is field work. So I guess wanted to show you one of the restoration projects that I worked on. This site is over 200 acres of tidal marsh restoration along the Delaware Bay on the coast of New Jersey. And it's called the Higbee Beach Restoration Project. And a major part of this restoration project is we are widening a tidal creek that was choked off by an industrial landfill. So you can see here pictures of them widening the creek. And in the past slide, this was the berm that we were building around the perimeter of the project. And this was to protect adjacent properties from flooding due to the increased hydrology we are adding to this area. And then this is just some more pictures of the project here with our widened stream. And we also have, we're creating dunes on site as well with all the wet excavated material kind of being the base for our dunes there. And then also, as I mentioned, I'm involved in SER. I'm sure all you guys know this because you're in the Society for Conservation Biology, but being in a professional society it's just a great way to make connections. I'm still very early in my career, but it's been great. It's been a great opportunity to learn from other professionals. And you can see in the bottom right here, a picture from one of our field trips that we host typically we do 1 to 2 field trips a year, at least in our chapter, to different restoration projects. And then there's also the opportunity to attend conferences. So with that, I'll just briefly talk about WSP. As I mentioned, we're a big company, and we have our hands in every different type of civil engineering project you could probably think of. But mainly my work, I'm technically in the water sector, but I feel like my work is kind of in between the earth and environment and water sector, which is, I'm sure, where most of you guys would be looking if you were interested in applying to WSP. And then this is just a map of all our offices in the US. I couldn't find one of Canada, but we have more than 32,000 total employees between the US and Canada. And in the US alone, we have more than 300 offices. So if you are interested in applying to WSP, chances are there's an office near you. And again, I work very closely with scientists and biologists with a lot of our restoration design We rely pretty heavily on those, and also during the construction restoration phase, we rely on them to help us with our inspections. So, with that being said, if anybody is interested, we post all our job openings online for WSP. So internships are available if that's where you're at right now, but also early career opportunities would be posted on there as well. So, and if you have any questions or if you do apply, please take my email and reach out to me. That's it. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. For our speakers too, I would just say if you feel comfortable doing so, feel free to drop your emails in the chat if you want people to be able to get in touch with you. I think so. Next we have Keith, I believe.
Yeah, that should be the right screen. You can hopefully see the presentation there. Okay, great. I'm also going to rely on slides. So hi everyone. As said, my name is Keith McCallum. I currently hold 2 different roles that I'm going to talk a bit about today. The first is Programs Coordinator with the Society for Ecological Restoration, and the second is Executive Director of Guardian Ecology. My history has involved a lot of moving around, but I'm currently living for the foreseeable future in the Wolastoq, or Beautiful River Valley in Traditional Territory of the Wolastoqey people in New Brunswick, Canada. So I'll start with a bit on my education. I grew up in Ontario, Canada. I did my undergrad at the University of Ottawa. I actually started out in biomed, but after a couple of years, I smartened up and switched to environmental science with a focus on conservation and biodiversity. After my undergrad, I did an 8-month grad certificate program at Niagara College in ecosystem restoration, which was a really pretty incredible way to get some experience with on-the-ground restoration, how restoration really works. And then after a year of work or so, I returned to school again and got a master's degree in ecological restoration at Simon Fraser University, BCIT in Vancouver. I've had a lot of different jobs. Some of them are actually relevant to the field. So between my grad certificate and the master's degree, I went to New Zealand, lived and worked there for a year, worked for a company called The Plant People in Auckland, mostly doing invasive species, invasive plant control, but a fair amount of restorative planting of native species as well. And then during my master's degree in Vancouver, I worked for the Invasive Species Council in Metro Vancouver, which is one of a very extensive network in Canada of regional invasive species councils. That was a lot of invasive plant control as well, but also a fair amount of community outreach and kind of community education, as well as helping them develop some best practice manuals for the more common invasive plants in British Columbia. And then after graduating from the master's degree, some of my fellow graduates and I were looking for jobs, and kind of came away with the impression that the jobs that we were seeing that were available to us didn't necessarily reflect what our experience was at that point, or our skills were at that point. So we came up with the idea of creating our own nonprofit as a framework, essentially, to enable us to run our own projects. Because it's obviously very hard to apply for funding if you're just one person, but if you have an organization, then it opens a lot of doors. So that idea turned into Guardian Ecology, which I'm now the executive director. Our biggest contract to date, the biggest project, I guess, to date with Guardian Ecology is a knotweed control and restoration project in a fairly geographically large municipality in New Brunswick, along the Bay of Fundy. And then also in 2020, early 2020, before the pandemic, I started doing some contract work with the Society for Ecological Restoration, and became a full-time employee in 2023. So for anyone who might be unaware of SER, I know Regina and Robert both mentioned it briefly, but SER is an international member-based nonprofit that's dedicated to advancing the science, practice, and policy of ecological restoration. So we've got just over 5,000 members now in 130 different countries. We do things like publishing the international standards for the practice of restoration. We host biannual conferences, and then our chapters, the SCR Northwest chapter that Regina's part of, just hosted, co-hosted a conference in Vancouver. So our chapters do more of that as well. And then beyond that, we manage the Restoration Ecology Scientific Journal, and try to do as much as we can to support a variety of networking opportunities and things like that for our members. So currently my role at SCR honestly covers quite a few different projects, but the three core ones that I work on, first is Make a Difference Week, which this year is taking place between May 31st and June 8th. This is an international week of restoration action where people and organizations around the world will host local volunteer ecology or restoration focused events. And then SCR coordinates globally to provide some support for the local events, and then also to collect some data on how those events went, to be able to demonstrate how impressive an impact we can have when we're all working together in the same direction. And then the second one is the Restoration Resource Center, which is SCR's database for everything related to restoration. We have sub-databases for restoration projects, certified restoration practitioners, organizations that do restoration, general resources, things like webinar and conference recordings and online tools, publications. And then the SCR Awards program is part of the work that we do every 2 years for our international conference. We give out multiple awards for individuals and projects that demonstrate excellence in restoration in a variety of ways. And then Guardian Ecology. So as executive director, like as I mentioned, the majority of what I do for Guardian Ecology is knotweed. We have well over 100 sites now that we're working on in the Fundy Albert municipality in New Brunswick. This year, we're also expanding it to incorporate more water quality assessment and monitoring, as well as testing out some new soil amendments to see if we can come up with a more efficient management technique for the knotweed and restoration post-management. And then always, if you're running your own organization, there's a never-ending pile of admin work to do as well. So that's a fair amount of my day. Yeah, and thank you all, I guess, for your time. If you want to get in touch with me, please do so. I'm always happy to chat and make connections or help out where I can. For anything Guardian Ecology related, you can reach out to me at guardianecology@gmail.com, and anything SCR related, it's Keith McCallum at scr.org, and I'll pop those in the chat as well. And that's it.
Great. Thank you very much, Keith, and our other two speakers as well. At this point, we can turn it over to just kind of open Q&A or discussion. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to either raise your hand or drop it in the chat. Maybe I'll start us off by just asking what advice you might give to somebody who's earlier in their career and looking to pivot from some other background into what you're doing now, for anyone who wants to answer that.
I can give an answer. I'd say Regina's experience, I think, was very close to mine. The chance to go back and do that really gave me a chance to build more community in the field, which has helped my career immensely. I think that's more broadly applicable than just in the context of a second degree. I think that any chance that you get to network or make friends in the field can be really beneficial. So that would be my top recommendation.
Yeah, I think that building that community is key. In whatever way, I would say like the professional community building has been helpful. In the roles that I've had, community building with like the community you're working in is also incredibly helpful, and that can be a really important basis for support too, as you're trying to find a path forward. You know, when I was at the Land Trust, connecting with the community of members at the Land Trust and the board was a group of folks who have helped provide connections and resources and taught me a lot over the years too. So relying on not obvious professional connections too, and finding other folks who have knowledge that can really help inform your projects and provide you opportunities to grow is I've found equally as valuable.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I can add on to that too, but it's just going to be similar to Keith and Regina. Just the connections you make, and I think having connections through the professional societies of your particular area of expertise or area that you want to be an expert in, I think that's a great start to it. So SER, conservation, co- uh, sus- I messed up the name. Society for Conservation of Biology. I think either one of those I think is a great way to kind of just build those connections. So
I thought of one other thing I'd add to that, to answering that question, if you're interested in pivoting. I hired a lot of like very early career folks into AmeriCorps roles, hosted folks for internships, folks for early career positions at the Land Trust, and folks who can pivot skills from other things that they've done. That's incredibly valuable. Like folks who came over from customer service to lead volunteer events, incredibly helpful. Don't discount the background you have if it's not immediately related. Just identify the skills and how they would relate to what you're doing, because those are valuable. And if you have that experience, claim it. It still matters, even if it didn't have, restoration or conservation in the title or job description.
Great. So there's a question in the chat from Zach. What roles are available in the private sector for someone interested in corporate sustainability or environmental sustainability?
I can answer this one. I know for WSP, we have a business line called Sustainability, Resilience, and Climate Change that I think is kind of along along the role that you're kind of asking for here. There, with that business line, a lot of the entry level positions are hard to get into because there's a limited number of positions right now because it's relatively new or developing. But there are definitely those options out there. I know WSP has it, and I wouldn't be shocked if there's some other large engineering consulting firms that have similar business lines that they're opening up. I don't know if that answers the question specifically, but look into WSP, see what jobs are open in your area.
Keith or Regina, I don't know if you have anything you want to add to that, or I can move on to the next question.
Maybe I'll just flag kind of making the transition to my title officially involving project manager has been interesting to see the amount of overlap that there is. And I think a lot of those roles that are focused on corporate or environmental sustainability that I see advertised are project manager positions. So having some basis in being able to illustrate that you have project management skills, whether that's through a certificate or articulating experience managing projects somewhere else, that seems like a transferable skill that can build you up to be more competitive for some of those positions.
Okay, great. So we'll move on to Grace, who asks, do you think your job security in your field will be negatively affected by the rollback of environmental regulations spearheaded by the current presidential administration? I think this is a US specific question.
Yeah, so no for me.
I hope not. I feel like a lot of my work kind of comes through the state of New Jersey. We have an Office of Natural Resource Restoration in New Jersey. So, and their funding actually comes from little litigation through natural resource damages. So all that money is actually not even taxpayer money. It's money that was given to the state through settlements that they made, because an oil company spilled oil in the Delaware Bay or off the coast of New Jersey. So that's kind of a unique thing for the state. And we do get a lot of work from nonprofits. So I'm not sure how those NGOs are going to be affected by all this yet. Hopefully, hopefully this administration realizes you can't take the baby out with the bathwater, right? Like, okay, we got to cut some things, maybe, yes, but there's some good things that have to stay in place and some good things that people worked hard for. So.
I think I would say, I don't feel like my job security is. I'm lucky. I think regional government and local government is a place to look if you're interested in working in government and you're worried about the impacts of the current presidential administration. So that's just one place to look. There's always going to be a need for people to keep things moving ahead for our public systems at some scale. But I think that there are like broader impacts. I've seen impacts in the land trust community that I used to work in. There's going to be less funding for certain types of projects to move ahead, and eventually that has an impact on the number of positions that might be open and the types of projects that could move ahead. So I'm sure that there will be impacts, but I think the flip side is that a lot of the work that organizations like that do is community supported. And so there are, in a lot of cases, really passionate community members stepping up and trying to prevent things from entirely needing to shut down. So but just like that, and for land management in general, right, there can be differences in the level of active land management that organizations do, but if people own land, there's going to be a need for someone to take care of land to some degree. So I don't think it'll go away entirely.
Great. So from Caroline, what would be your advice on the best way to find a related job? Would you suggest looking on sites like Indeed, Handshake, LinkedIn, etc., or go directly to an organization's webpage? Or would you recommend a different route, like reaching out to someone personally, or any other routes?
I'm going to drop a link in the chat, shamelessly plug SCR's job. Sorry, I muted myself. This got a lot of ecology-specific jobs, so that might be one you'd be interested in checking out. I would say personally, I found that, like we were saying earlier, the connections in the fields, building the friendships first can really help. It can suck if you're in a tight financial spot, but volunteering can really help. I can speak to SCR, my experience with SCR. We tend to look at high-level volunteers before opening jobs up to the public in general. Or if we open the job up, then we'll encourage high-level volunteers to apply. So making yourself known to an organization that you want to work for that way can often be a good way. It just isn't a guarantee and often takes more time and work. I've found that to be a lot more successful than sending out hundreds of job applications personally.
Yeah, I would, anytime you can make a personal connection, I think that's the best way to go. I know, there's pluses and minuses to working in a big company like WSP, and kind of one of the minuses is sometimes applications can just get lost in the mix. There's so many different people applying to a lot of different jobs. So anything that you can do to stand out, I've had people reach out to me through LinkedIn that have graduated from the same school as me and just let me know that they were applying and asked if I could just forward their resume along. And sometimes that goes a long way, like just getting your resume in front of the hiring manager, whoever that is. Like if somebody can pass that along for you, I think that just helps you stand out, just that name recognition. Yeah.
I think I'd second the more tailored job boards. So SER's job board, there's a lot of really great job boards out there that are more specific for certain types of jobs. I know the Land Trust Alliance maintains a job board. There's a Washington State Association of Land Trusts that has a job board for land trusts in Washington. And there's similar structures of organizations that advertise jobs like that in different regions across internationally, right? Any area you're in, you're going to be able to find local connections. So knowing if you're looking, like what scale you're looking at, are you looking for anything like across a really large area, or are you really focusing in on a certain region? And if you're focusing in on a certain region, getting to know the organizations in that region and how they share jobs can be really helpful. And there's often a lot of different ways that things are listed. I know in Washington State too, government jobs are listed on a Washington State job board, and that same system is how regional governments share jobs. And you can go in and sign up for alerts for things that align with certain interests. So at least if you are in an area where there's that level of structure for those types of jobs, that can be really helpful too, signing up for alerts.
Okay, so I think that I got all the questions that are in the chat, but if there's any that I missed that haven't been answered, please feel free to send them again. In the meantime, I'll ask a follow-up question out of my own curiosity. How much does it seem like these kinds of hiring processes vary between organizations? I think about large companies, like where Robert works versus smaller nonprofits. Do you need to change your approach depending on what kind of organization it is?
I'll chime in, and I'm sure you both have thoughts too, but I would say yes, going from being hired at a very small nonprofit in like I started off in an AmeriCorps type position, so I was able to progress kind of through, right? The positions I moved into were expansions of my job description and weren't really publicly advertised. So I had gotten in at a very entry level position and was just able to progress up through the organization. And then moving over to a large county, it's a much more like formal structure for how the job application process works, and you have to tailor your language a bit for the way that applications are filtered. So knowing what kind of an organization you're applying to and being able to tailor a little bit, like at a small nonprofit, it's really helpful if you can show that you are comfortable with wearing a lot of hats and doing a lot of different things. You never know what you're going to get asked to do. And I really think like being able to articulate that clearly can be a real boon. And when you're applying at a larger organization, at least in the experience I have, for government positions, you want to look at like the keywords that are in the position and make sure you're really clearly articulating exactly how you meet the desired qualifications in your resume and in the answers you provide. So those are two very different ways that I've looked at it.
Yeah, I'll second a lot of what Regina's saying. My experience hiring for Guardian Ecology and hiring for SER, because as Regina says, a small nonprofit like SER even, I guess kind of middle size, you still wear a lot of hats. So even though I'm a programs coordinator, I get put on hiring quite a bit. The two organizations we hire fairly differently. Guardian Ecology, we try to really, I guess, minimize the work required to apply for one of our jobs, because it's field work positions, it's jobs anyone can do. So we're really looking for who we can benefit the most in that position, as opposed to, requiring applicants to jump through a bunch of hoops. SER is similar in philosophy, I would say, but there's more to the process. I would say even for small organizations, you're likely applying for a job that 100 other people have applied for. SER, we try to really be, I guess, have a lot of integrity in our hiring process. So, we look at every individual application that comes through, but I'm still if I'm looking through 100 applications, then I'm going to be keyword searching in those applications. So it's very helpful to pull those keywords out and get them in your application for sure. Yeah, and then I think the other things that we've been saying already, for SER, if you can show in your application that you've taken a real look at our website, that always stands out, that you have put effort into tailoring your application to our job, which obviously is hard to do if you're applying for 100 jobs in a month, but yeah, that's what I'd recommend.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have much to add to that. I think I would just say if you do get to like the interview step, just be yourself. I think that's one thing my team kind of looks for is people that are personable and have good people skills. I mean, even if you're doing field work, you still have to interact with people, even if you're remote a lot of the times. I think just having that creates a good collaborative team environment, and yeah, it's something that I think across all companies people look for.
Great. Oh yeah, did you have something to add, Regina?
I might just, the conversation and what folks are sharing made me think of this, and it was something I meant to say, and I don't know if I clearly said it when I was talking. But it can be hard to find a conservation job. It can be hard to find a job where you're like, oh, this is exactly what I want to do. And sometimes it takes a while. It might take a few jobs to get there. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's okay to have different jobs that are not what you thought you would do from the start. You learn something, you bring stuff from those jobs. Just, I think like remembering that that's okay can be really helpful when you're going through the like phases of looking for a job and getting rejected and trying to find the right fit. And I think it's also helpful in a passion field for folks to make sure that they remember their job isn't their identity. You have worth and value outside of that. And I find it really helpful to I think that's why I really like volunteering for organizations where I get to do different things that I don't do day to day in my job, but that are the fun parts of what I like about restoration and conservation. And I find that helpful because you are more than your job, and that helps you remember it. And it also makes it a little easier when folks say no sometimes. So just you're still going to do great things. It just might take a while to get to the right role.
Fantastic. I think with that, we are right on the hour at our time. And I think we've gotten through all the questions in the chat. So maybe we can wind this down unless anybody has one more burning question, since we did get off to a late start. But if not, then I think we can probably wrap this up. But thank you very much to Robert and Regina and Keith for your contributions. This was really informative and hopefully very helpful. And thanks very much, everyone, for coming.
Thanks for having us, Anna.
Thank you. Hope to see you guys at the North
Thanks.
American Conference in 2026. So,
Yeah,
thanks.
if you see us, say hi.
In Milwaukee.
Bye, folks.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. All right, thanks, Bernie. I'm going to hop off.
Thanks, Anna. Although I think someone is requesting your email.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Thank you. Yeah, I didn't see that. There we go. There you are.
Awesome. Thanks, Anna.
Yep.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.